I think we're recording. Okay, welcome everyone to the 8th January Charts Chat meeting. I'm Adnan, and I'll be walking us through the agenda today. I'm going to share the link to the agenda in the chat so we can follow along and take notes. Looks like there's quite a few different things to get through today. So the first one, I guess, is kind of an announcement. Just a welcome to Carlos Panato, who is a new charts maintainer. I don't know if he's actually on the call today.
He is not.
Okay. Well, anyway, hopefully you'll see him around. And also Martin, who was previously a chart maintainer, has now stepped down. Just due to inactivity and not being able to continue maintaining charts. There's a question here about whether we should add an emeritus status, and I think that the Helm org does have this somewhere in the guidelines for maintaining sub-projects. Let me see if I can just pull it up. Does anyone have any thoughts on this?
Sounds like a nice thing to have.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Helm itself has done it before, and I think it's kind of a nice, nice way to kind of acknowledge folks for their past work.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a good idea.
So I'm not actually sure who added this. I think I have a suspicion it might be Matt Farina, who can't make it to the call today. So, so I'll just put +1s on the notes there, and then we can chat about that offline or in 2 weeks. But yeah, generally sounds like consensus is we should do that. Okay, next thing on the list here is charts that fail to install, like Grafana. Did someone here put this down?
I think the question is more generic than that. The real question is what to do with maintainers who disappeared, basically, with kind of orphaned charts. I'm not sure Grafana is orphaned, but the maintainer does not respond as far as I know, so maybe this is the real question before trying to even solve the failing chart problem.
So the question is, how do we actually deal with charts that are potentially abandoned, not being updated?
So we already know the long-term solution is decentralization, but what about right now?
I do remember that we had some documentation about I can't remember if it was abandoning a chart or I know we've had previous discussions about deprecating charts if they're no longer being maintained.
What about contacting the maintainer who is in the chart YAML, and if this person doesn't respond or he decides that he doesn't want to be the maintainer anymore, then deprecate it or offer it for other people to maintain it?
Yeah, I'm just looking up the Grafana chart maintainers. So I don't know if we've already reached out to them. Does someone know if that's happened?
I I think it has been discussed to do so in an earlier meeting, but I'm not sure anything has been done.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely think that would be a good first step for someone to just try to email it. Their emails are in the chart.yaml, so the Grafana chart specifically. And then if there's no response there, I think we would need a way to announce that particular charts are not being maintained anymore. And if someone's interested in taking out maintainership of that, they're welcome to do so. Otherwise, after some period, that chart should then be deprecated.
I feel like we should have some testing, like on a weekly or monthly basis to go through the charts. Because I have seen charts start to fail because of changes to the testing or other things. And so it would be good if we at least had a list of things that we know are currently failing, even if we don't necessarily do something about it, at least give us something to refer back to when we have stuff like this going on.
Yeah, and actually that reminds me, Kubernetes head used to be tested on a range of charts. I think it was a selective list of charts though, but it would provide every now and then every time I think it would run end-to-end tests, it would go and test all these charts, and then provide a test grid to see which ones are failing. If we could do something similar to that, I think that would be quite nice. I don't know if the test infrastructure that we're using allows us to test on a regular basis rather than just on pushes. So that would be something to find out.
Yeah. I mean, it probably wouldn't be too hard to have a monthly job to go and do that and report in separately. And maybe create an issue or something beside the current testing framework if it doesn't support it. I mean, pretty much a for loop through a set of directories. We would probably only need to do stable, not care so much about incubator, I think.
Yeah, I think incubator can have broken charts. I think that's fine.
I think in our case, in the issue you linked, it will not even solve anything, because I think the chart using the default values will work, but as soon as you activate persistence, it will not. So it is more a matter of correct testing rather than regular testing.
Right, it's not just a case of just doing a helm install and seeing if that works.
Yeah, I think doesn't it have a CI folder with a set of values it does turn storage on? I thought I remembered seeing that.
So yeah, Grafana doesn't.
Do that.
Yeah, okay, Grafana doesn't. I thought I saw it did, but maybe it was one of the other. Maybe it was Kibana or something else. But that would certainly help with the testing of it.
So add CI values to Grafana.
Maybe that would be the way to determine which ones we actually run through a monthly test, is ones that actually have like a defined set of tests and a CI folder with a more robust set of values.
I think it's still valuable to test with default values as well, though, just to find anything that's potentially broken by default as well.
Yeah.
One thing to watch out for when using CI values is that if you don't provide, say, like an empty values YAML file in the CI directory, then the tests will only be run with the values files in the CI directory. So you won't be testing against the default values.
Right.
Should we actually require such a CI directory to exist into every chart in this repository?
We could do, and then we could just go and add a empty values file to each of those directories to start with. I don't know if that would provide much more value than just having
yes,
no directory there.
it would be easier to let the maintainers do it. So it should just be in the in the documentation somewhere.
Yeah, we could just put an empty values file and a README in there, and that would be a little bit better documented than, I don't know if that we really have much guidance at all right now for using CI values files.
We could certainly add it for new charts, but then we're also trying to push back on new charts with the multi-repo stuff for the Helm hub. So I think for the existing, if we want to try and enforce it, I think it's probably on us to do add a CI with an empty, so at least the scaffolding is there, so it's easier for maintainers. Otherwise, I don't see how we'll really be able to wrangle enough maintainers to actually come back and do it.
At least the first step would be to document this in the guidelines, the chart review guidelines.
Yeah, absolutely.
An easy first step.
Yeah. And there's been talk about doing chart scoring as well, and that's potentially something we would add to the chart quality score, is do they have a CI directory?
Mm-hmm.
Could that be ignored for when you're publishing charts? Like, you just put that in Helm ignore?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it, I mean, even if it isn't, it's just a set of values files, so it's pretty small. And
right, but I mean, it's not really relevant to the
actual package, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you just put the whole CI directory in the Helm ignore file.
Would it be worthwhile to make that change in the default Helm chart blueprint as well?
To add that, I think it would be. But we'd have to pass that by the Helm maintainers, make sure they're okay with it.
Yeah.
Because, they might want to try and maintain simplicity rather than adding so much extra scaffolding. But it doesn't hurt to try.
I think putting it in the default Helm ignore makes sense. Actually adding the directory might not make sense by default.
Yeah. But if we do document it as a best practice, then that might encourage them to also do it.
Mm-hmm.
So we should probably get it documented first. That's probably our first step if someone is interested in running with that.
Yeah, does someone want to take the action item to go and document this in our requirements?
Okay, I can try, but I'm afraid I can do it this week, but maybe next week.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine.
By the way, should we document how to test from another repository as well? How to set up a test infrastructure as well, or to use the existing one from a different repository? I don't know what's the plan, because as we are going decentralized, as soon as I have my own repository, I don't have any test in it by default. At least, should we document this and how to do it?
Yeah, I think the plan for that is to be in the charts testing repo, and Reinhard isn't on the call to talk more about that, but I think there's some documentation there already on how to go and run that. It's still requires you to have a cluster somewhere and set all of that stuff up and set your CI and stuff up. But as far as running the actual charter testing commanders, there's quite a lot of documentation in this repo. Is that what you were thinking, Cedric? Or?
Yes. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I would try to see what Reinhard has in mind in terms of, I guess, putting it out there more and trying to get more people to use it.
I'm sorry, I got distracted a second. In the future, will the official testing infrastructure will test other repository, or should everybody be in charge of its own testing infrastructure?
I think the thinking right now is that people should be in charge of their own testing infrastructure. I don't think we easily test people's charts in our infrastructure, right? We'd have the same problem today where we need to go and OK to test things, which is another blocker to getting things merged. So I think it would make sense to make it up to the repository owners to go and set that stuff up. But if we can have a way to then, either score charts or figure out which charts are being tested using the testing infrastructure and display that on something like the Helm Hub, I think that would be the ideal way to promote that.
Yeah, the main issue with the chart testing library right now is just setting up your CI infrastructure to have a cluster to test against. It is pretty simple to use that library just for linting purposes, because you don't have to set up a whole cluster and everything. But we have definitely had an eye on making that as easy to use as possible, so that we can, obviously, in moving to a more decentralized model, we're losing a lot of value potentially in having that infrastructure all set up for everyone to use.
I think using like Kubernetes in Docker or doing minikube --no VMs, I think it is, you can get a cluster running up in like Travis pretty easily. So that would allow someone to spin up a cluster, run the tests, shut down the cluster, all sort of inside of Travis or whatever their preferred CI system is. So I don't think that's a huge deal breaker.
Yeah, it's not huge. I think we just need more fleshed out examples, or maybe even like a init command to make it super, super simple to set it up.
Yeah, the testing repository right now has a set of examples, one for Docker for Mac, GKE, and Kubernetes and Docker, with Circle CI files in there. But I agree, it'd be nice if there was a way you could just either clone a repository that already has it set up, or if there's any easier ways to just get that set up. I think the easiest thing is, as Paul said, I think the easiest thing would be for people to just run something like Kubernetes and Docker rather than have to worry about credentials for GKE or some other cloud. Any more thoughts on fading charts? I think I feel like a good step is to just add this to the guidelines for now, and then we can see about adding that to Helm create as well, to add it to the Helm ignore. And then I think also trying to figure out, I can take the action item and figuring out whether we can set up testing for it to run on a schedule.
All right, sounds good. So we should move on to the next topic.
How can we be more responsive to the PRs that we currently have?
I don't know, we have a great answer to that, and it's something that we kind of talk about every other call, it seems. You know.
Yeah, and I imagine due to the holidays, things will slow down quite a bit as well.
Yeah. And I think one thing is we'll have kind of our different workflows on how we decide what PRs to actually be looking at and stuff. So I mean, we could maybe try and have a more consistent way we decide on that based on, you know, size and age and stuff. But I feel like we're usually not too bad about it. And normally if someone hassles us in Slack, someone gets on it pretty quickly. So I think at some point, it's also on the pull request owner to actually chase us. If they're just making passive pull requests, then, you know, they can wait.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think I generally use the the least recently updated, just to see what's kind of in GitHub issues or pull requests as a sort of function for least recently updated, and so you can go through and see which ones haven't been responded to in a while.
Yeah, I usually do that, and I'll do like obviously I'll look at ones assigned to me or requested by me, and I'll also look at stuff that still has needs okay to test. I find that's a pretty good way to find stuff as well. All right. When should we stop accepting new charts?
Yeah, that's a good question. My gut feeling is we should look towards doing it soon. I would say that we should start with Incubator, stop accepting new charts into Incubator, and then I think we can use Incubator to test out deprecating that and moving charts outside of that before we tackle stable. But then I think sooner or later we should stop accepting charts into stable as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think for now at least we should be saying to every new chart, is there a reason you want this in the centralized repo versus running your own repo? Because there might be good reasons for them wanting to do it. And there might be, you know, some canonical charts that we want to continue to maintain or continue to bring in. So I think for the foreseeable, for the like short term, push back on any new chart and see what happens. And then we can, anything that one of us thinks might make sense to come in regardless, then we can talk about that at one of these meetings, or talk about it in Slack or whatever at any time.
Yeah, I think we should try to figure out a date. I don't think we can do it now, but we should start thinking about when a date makes sense, so that we can let people know that this is when we're going to stop accepting charts into stable. And as you said, Paul, I think that we just try to push back.
Yeah,
I think we still wanted some more documentation on how you can go and easily set up a chart repository. So that still needs to happen before we go in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I dug around and there were like enough hints around the place. There's just not like a
central place where
a central place. Exactly.
Yeah. I think putting that in the Helm docs or something would make it a lot more discoverable.
Yeah.
What's a good reason to accept a chart right now, do you think?
Well, I think it would be a widely used software that is not yet in the repository. If it exists, it could make sense.
Like of stuff that we already have, I think things like the ingress charts make a lot of sense to be in the central location, because they should be very well tested and trusted. And I think we're kind of the place for that to be right now.
Yeah. Okay, so things that are kind of new projects or less widely used things. I think, if I remember correctly, Homebrew has some guidelines on this. They have some requirements for like a project to have a certain number of users. I don't actually know how they measure it, but they require projects to be fairly active and have certain number of users for it to be included into the Homebrew distribution.
Yeah, I think we can probably kind of, at least initially, just play it by ear and be a bit judicious about it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Maybe when we've had a few of the discussions, we'll have a better idea of where we land as a group on what we should or shouldn't have.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think if there's anything that we're unsure about, we can just bring it up in one of these meetings and decide together.
Yeah. All right. Is this only a 30-minute call, or do we have an hour?
I think we have the full hour actually.
Okay.
But if folks need to jump off, feel free to.
No, that's fine. I was just trying to work out if we needed to wrap up or if we should keep going.
So the next one here is proof of concept.
Just before this proof of concept, a related question would be, how could we better advertise the decentralization thing? Because virtually nobody is aware of this coming. So they are just asking the problem we already know, but they don't know in the near-term future, everything will be decentralized. So maybe we should advertise it better.
Yeah, I feel like we've mentioned it quite a few times, both here and SIG-Apps, obviously, but obviously there's a bunch of people who are contributing to the charts repo who don't regularly attend these things. I'm not sure.
So it's only the core contributors, but not the maintainers or wannabe maintainers.
Yeah.
We should definitely have it in the review guidelines. We should have it in the contribution template. I think we could probably have wording in both of those things that should help both the person submitting it know that it's maybe not going to be accepted, and also the people reviewing it, assuming that we actually go back and look at those docs every once in a while.
We could also, I think, when you create a pull request, there's a snippet that gets printed out.
Yes.
We could totally put it there, and that would be pretty visible, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely worth doing. Does someone want to take the action item to go and do that?
I don't have a ton of time, but if you want to throw it at me, and if I haven't done it by the next chat, we can see if someone else wants to take it on.
Sounds good. Thanks, Paul. Okay, does that cover your question, Cedric?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, POC use hooks to clean up after deletion. Juan?
Yes, I can explain it more or less. You open the pull request. Basically, we were thinking about including a way to remove the stuff that is installed when you do a release of a chart, but when you delete it, it's still there. E.g., if you're using a stateful set, the persistent billing claims will persist there, but at some point you might want to remove it if you remove the chart, even if you know that there is data there that you might not want to lose. The thing is, we don't have a way to do it in an easy way now, and we were thinking about adding ways to use the hooks or to remove all the stuff that you don't want to be there. For instance, persistent volume claim, but also in this concept, we were thinking about when we configure applications with secrets, which are created randomly when templating. So you need to pass that password that you generated automatically if you want to grade, unless you preserve the secret. So here we have two different uses. One is let's not recreate secrets, and so using hooks, and let's clean everything that is there after you delete the chart once you delete it. So I know it's a pretty big change because you need to create jobs or other kind of Kubernetes resource with extra privilege, but we would like to know whether it makes sense or not.
Yeah, another case of this is, I think in our CI, we've had issues where certain charts will use hooks to create CRDs, but then won't actually clean them up afterwards, which means testing those charts again, installing them charts again fails because that CRD already exists. It was a recent issue. So having some sort of cleanup job would allow us to go and then delete that CRD under certain circumstances. I don't know how we do that from the CI test. I guess we'd use the CI values to do that.
So my first thought of this proof of concept is that I think it's a bit complicated. Would it be a good idea to, well, even prevent auto-generation of random password and require a user to set the password? I mean, what is the expected use case, the valid use case, where you don't want to generate on your own the password and to let the chart generate it? Is there a valid use case for this?
I think that you're right. I mean, at the beginning, I think we did it just because of security. Just because of security password. Let's create a new password randomly. But I don't know if it makes sense to just show an error and say, please, this is very insecure, provide a password. The problem that we have now is that this secret, unless you pass again the same password that was randomly generated when grading, the database is not gonna work. So that's why that's what the idea about using hooks. But I agree, it's a complicated solution. I don't know if everybody is going to understand the whole cycle of the pre-install, post-delete, all this stuff about the life cycle of the chart. So I don't know. I'm open to simpler solutions.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's a good point, Cedric. In that, I think just to give some background. Initially, we wanted random passwords so that charts could just be installed with a single Helm install. There was nothing else that needed to be done. I don't know, now that we have the CI values, that used to be a requirement for the CI because we would just run helm install without any special values. But with the CI values, we can now get around that. I don't know if there is any other reason really to have random passwords now.
Yeah, I would love to see them go. They drive me crazy. I think having a default password and having a note that checks to see if you're using that default password and spit out a massive warning is probably a good idea. Or just failing completely. Either one of those I'm fine with. But the random passwords drives me crazy. Unless we had a way for those passwords to be sticky, which I don't think we do.
Yeah, we don't. There was an issue at some point, and I know it has been fixed now, but there was an issue where Tiller would leak values, which was a concern for setting passwords and values, or any sort of secret in values. Yeah. The other thing is, because by default, Helm stores things as config maps, release data as config maps, those values can then be fetched from that config map. You still have to, I think you have to base64 decode it and then ungzip it and then pass it as a protobuf message to actually get to it. But you can get to it that way.
Yeah, you can run the Helm get values, the release name, and it will give you all of the values.
Yeah.
Which I think is what you were getting at just before.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's no way to restrict access to that via RBAC. So that would be a potential security concern.
I did want to say, I mean, this does definitely look a little bit complex for like needing to be able to do this, use this pattern for any given chart. So I was thinking it might make sense for it to be part of, say, like a utility chart that is consumed as a dependency instead, that abstracts this away a little bit. I've done something similar with this Helm cleanup chart that deletes, like gives you a time to live that you can configure easily for a given Helm release, and then it just goes and deletes the Helm release after that time with a cron job. So I think you could do something similar here just to make it so users don't have to set up RBAC and all that stuff.
I am hesitant to add extra charts to requirements that aren't absolutely essential, because I think it can start to get a bit confusing about what's actually being installed where when people are running charts. But I'm not hard against it. I just want to make sure we're wary and sure that we want to go down that route.
Yeah, it definitely comes at a cost too.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the right approach is here. It is disabled by default, I think, in the POC. Is that correct one?
Yeah, it's disabled by default. It's just optional. I mean, I like the idea that you're saying about removing the random regeneration of the password, but that doesn't solve the second problem of, for instance, PVCs on a stateful set and other stuff that can be left in the cluster for some other reason. I'm just thinking of stateful set, but I guess that there are other kind of resources that can be there after deleting the chart. I don't know what's the proper way. I know that it's not, I mean, that whenever we mention RBAC, we are a little bit scared and we say this is too complex. But yeah, maybe like leaving everything optional is a solution, because the templates are going to be more complex for sure. But the final result for the user, if it is disabled by default, is going to be something easy to understand. The user doesn't need to know anything about RBAC. If you decide to enable RBAC, you're supposed to have more knowledge about RBAC and you know what you're doing. I don't know.
So the other thing on this is, I think it might also be Helm's responsibility to clean up the resources it creates rather than the chart. So like if as part of the chart you've asked for a PVC, then Helm should have at least a flag that says also delete sticky things.
Yeah, I think that,
you know, that's like an equivalent of Helm delete versus Helm delete purge, right? It's not doing the same function, but it's the same kind of idea. You've got kind of a basic delete that just deletes the resources, and you've got the delete that deletes the entire release. I think doing the similar pattern would be a good idea.
The thing is that with stateful set, you use a persistent volume claim template to generate those PVCs. So I think that Helm loses the control about what resources is generated because it's a resource generated by another resource. So I don't know if that's the problem. So yeah, maybe Helm can have some extra logic, saying something like, okay, if the stateful set uses a PVC template, then look for the PVCs that have these labels or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the stateful set one is definitely a trickier one, but certainly for things like hooks, there could easily be a Helm delete -- also hooks or delete hooks option as well. And that would actually solve that problem at least. Yeah, I think that's worth thinking about. What we could do is, with the current proof of concept, we could go ahead and merge this in. Is it the MariaDB chart right now? And see how that works, and try to get feedback on that. And then, if this is making sense to people, we can roll it out to other charts.
Yeah, I don't know, but how do you practically can request feedback for this specific feature? Because most users are going and they won't notice that this new feature is there because it's disabled by default. How can you like promote this solution to be tested at least?
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good point. What we could do is we could have someone come on SIG-apps and demo it there and see what people think there. Might be a good way of getting it out. We could just demo this proof of concept actually. I don't even have to merge it in.
Maybe.
Just to see what users are thinking in terms of that.
Yeah, for me, I thought I like the concept. I still think it's a workaround because we lack things in the Helm itself. So I'm quite concerned about maintenance of such charts having this, and the amount of time you need to spend in order to understand the chart. Currently, things are quite simple, but understanding this change requires some amount of, you need to have some kind of habits with the Helm before understanding this, because it looks like black magic. So we understand this. We have 5 people who understand this because we use Helm a lot, but it may not be the case for everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So maybe the conclusion would be either, it's only my opinion, but either to forbid or treat this as a warning, the default password, and or having the changes, the needed changes into Helm 3 in the long term. I think with Lua you can do this, something like this. I feel it would be something that you can do. Maybe not, but
potentially, yeah. Again, I don't know about the stateful set PVC case, but the the hook stuff will actually go away with Lua anyway, I think, is the idea, because the hooks will be part of the Lua pipeline, the event pipeline there. I think a good next step here would be to maybe jump on the Helm dev call on Thursday and see what they think about extending Helm delete as it is today, to add like a flag to go and delete extra things like hooks. I think that actually would be a good solution here.
Yeah, maybe the solution is to include the whole deletion feature on Helm itself, and then to think about removing the random passwords.
Yeah.
And then maybe we should be encouraging chart writers to make sure in the README and also maybe in the notes template instructions on how to delete things that stick around, like the PVCs. And that way new users kind of know that they need to go and do that. So I know I've certainly looked at my cluster and gone, oh, why have I got these 40 something PVCs that aren't attached to anything? I was like, oh yeah, because I was testing a bunch of Helm charts. So I think making it more obvious by READMEs and notes would probably be a good idea. So maybe something in the contribution guidelines or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I'll probably be at the Helm Dev call on Thursday, so I can bring this up there.
Should we move on to the next one and try and knock it out in the 5 minutes we have left?
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes left. We have 2 more items on the agenda here. So charts for secrets, config maps.
Yeah, and I think we kind of decided in Keybase that we don't want these. So these charts are basically meta charts for creating secrets or config maps. So you basically just pass it a set of key values and it goes and creates your secrets or config maps for you. I don't know if their thought is you'd use it as a dependency or something, but I don't think anyone from the maintainer list really likes this concept.
Interesting. Yeah, I think this sort of thing would be okay in Incubator, but I wouldn't want to add this to stable.
Yeah, I replied in Slack and suggested that if they want this stuff, because they had like a bunch of charts, including the one for their project itself, and I was like, you all should probably look at just hosting this yourselves. So maybe that'll solve the problem for us.
Yeah. Actually, if this is the same person I spoke to on Slack, yeah, actually, I think it is. It was for the Git webhook proxy chart, I think. Was that the one you saw?
Maybe. Let me find my Slack.
So there was this.
Yeah, was that Fuzzy and Ahmad?
Yeah.
If I pronounced that right. Yeah.
Yeah, who also did the Git webhook proxy chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a chat with him on Slack because he was asking about looking at that PR, and I kind of nudged him towards running his own chart repository. So they said that they already have a public repository, and I asked him to look into whether it would make sense to add that to the Helm Hub.
Perfect.
So he's looking into that right now. So that might help that problem.
Wicked. And that kind of just brought on that extra discussion around secrets. What other best practices do we have documented? Scott found this issue that seems to be a pretty good document of what is or shouldn't, what should or shouldn't be done. I don't know where we ever got to at the end of it. And then we were just briefly talking about how currently if you're storing it as values, you're kind of encouraging keeping that in Git. But even if you're doing manifests, you're kind of doing the same thing anyway. So maybe
Yeah,
it's
I
a
mean,
wash.
you can get manifest, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't. Yeah, I mean, this sounds like a case where if you have that sort of multi-tenancy, you need to restrict people's access to things, then maybe a Helm per namespace or Tiller per namespace approach is better.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that main thing was just a reminder that we should go back and make sure we have some decent best practices documented.
Do we have any best practices right now for secrets at all? I don't think we do.
I don't think we do, aside from the stuff in that issue, which probably a lot of that could be just formalized into a doc as a starting point.
Yeah. Okay. Is this something that should exist in the Helm docs or in the charts docs?
I think it's probably charts docs because it's kind of what we expect best practice wise if you wanted to have something in our Git repos or in the chart hub. Again, once we have a way we can do scoring, we could even potentially score based on what they have in their values file and whatnot.
Mm.
Maybe. We'd at least look for secret templates and say, hey, maybe templating out secrets isn't the best idea or something.
Yeah. Probably goes into random passwords as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Helm Secrets plugin, but it's kind of interesting.
It rings a bell. What exactly did it do again?
It basically just gives you an install command that before it runs will decrypt secret files with SOPs and then re-encrypt them after they've been used.
Okay.
So you store them in your Git repo. I've got some clients that are pretty interested in using it, but.
Do you want to link that in the doc real quick?
Oh, yeah, I put it in the Zoom chat, but I can put it in the doc too.
Oh, perfect. Thanks.
There you go.
All right, I got to run. I've got another call to jump onto. This was a really good chat.
Me too. Yeah, we should wrap up. I don't know if there's an action item on that last one. Paul, if you want to maybe take a look into adding that documentation as well, or best practices for that.
Yep. Yeah, I can do that. At least get a scaffold of a doc going as a do not merge PR or something.
Cool. Sounds good. Okay. Thanks everyone. See you all. Well, next week will be the office hours again, and then see you in 2 weeks for the next Charles chat.
Thanks.
See ya.
Thanks. See you.
Thanks again.